of my city, king of my country, king of my homeland, king of the filthy, king of the fallen. We living again, king of the shooters, looters, and ghettos popping, king of the past, present, future. My ancestors watching, king of the future, king of the soldiers, king of the bloodshed, king of the wisdom, king of the ocean, king of the respect, king of the optimistic and dreamers that go and get it, king of the winners, district and geniuses with conviction, king of the fighters, king of the fathers, king of the belated, king of the answer, king of the king of the empathy and resentment, king of remorse, king of my enemies, may they fall defeat, I rejoice, king of the skyscrapers, dodging haters, pro-religion, nine faces, go against them, I erase them with precision, I embrace them with collision, kings did it, king's vision, Black Panther, King Kendrick, all hail the king. I dropped a million tears, I know several responsibilities put me here, I don't pedal backwards, but I live old-fashioned, the lens that I'm looking through won't prescribe you the right glasses, masses are now free, ashes I'm dumping out, about to spread all across seas, sisters and brothers in unison, not because of me, because we don't glue with the opposition, we glue with peace, but still to fuck up your organization if any beef. What do you stand for? Are you an activist? What are your city plans for? Are you an accident? Are you just in the way? Your native tongue contradicting what your body language say? Are you a king? Are you joking? Are you a king? Are you posing? Are you a king? Are you smoking bull rides to keep you open? Because a king don't cry, king don't die, king don't like, king give all, king get by, king don't fall, kingdom come. When I come, you know why. King, I am T'Challa.
Control, I'm told, from across the track. Where is the mayor who make all things fair? He lives outside our polluted air, and I didn't have to be here. You didn't have to love for me while I was just a nothing child. Why couldn't they just let me be, let me be, let me be, let me be? I'm sorry, son.
Welcome. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mo Beasley. I'm a technical director at the Adrian Arts Center for Performing Arts. And I say welcome. I welcome you on behalf of the entire Adrian Arts Center's family, our CEO, Johan Zietzman, and our sponsors, Bank of America. I am a proud member of the Adrian Arts Center's Heritage Committee, which produces the Heritage Project, which presents these consciousness-raising conversations. I'm a part of a group of staff members at the Arts Center who are of African descent, from the Caribbean, from the African continent, from South America, and from the United States. We created this committee, this project, 3 years ago as a way of stitching together the Black diaspora in South Florida, from all these different places that we come from, through the arts, through conversation. So tonight, we're going to have a conversation about Black Hollywood. And we call it a consciousness raising conversation, to quote the late, great, recently late Bell Hooks. In her book, Feminism is for Everyone, she states that every movement is created by a consciousness raising conversation that's started in someone's living room, around someone's kitchen table, on a stoop, on a Zoom. And we talk about the challenges, the problems, the needs, the deficits, the dreams that we have for ourselves. So when we have a conversation about Black Hollywood, what is that movement? Is there a movement? Should there be a different movement, a new movement? What is Black Hollywood? What is Black cinema? So tonight we bring together an esteemed and gifted and talented and sharp panel to unpack those questions and so much more. So thank you for coming. And I don't want to waste any more of your time. Let's get this party started. I want to welcome, in addition to being a technical director at the Arts Center, I am a Howard University graduate. So I am very proud to introduce our moderator for tonight. She is a Howard University graduate, and she is a professor of their associate professor of the film school at Howard University and the director of the graduate film program at Howard University. So y'all clap your virtual hands and welcome on board Dr. Montre Missouri.
Thank you. That
You're
was
welcome.
a really generous introduction.
Happy to have you.
Thank you again and welcome. So I'm going to have the privilege of introducing the rest of the panel for tonight's discussion, starting with Denise Simmons, who is a brilliant award-winning filmmaker and is the founder of MD Simmons Productions. So hey, Denise. Okay, and next up is April Dobbins, who is, I think she might currently be Zooming in right now from Harvard University. She's a Sundance Institute Knight Fellow photographer, writer, and filmmaker, as well as I think I recently found out farming background as well. So I think we might tie into that later on tonight, the connection between that and film from the business standpoint. Also with us tonight is Marco or Mo Mall, who is a producer, an executive, a creator, a founder of Florida Film House, and sounds like a very, I'm getting excited about coming down to Florida because he's a restaurateur. So thanks. Hi, Marco. Welcome. And last but certainly not least, and I'm going to let him do part of his own introduction for our panel this evening. We'll be joined by Mo Beasley, who, as he said in his introduction, is a fellow Bison, as well as a poet, playwright, community artist, and activist. And so, Mo, if you want to turn on your camera again and say hello. Hi.
Hello. I should have changed clothes, right?
So So I'm really excited, obviously, to have this discussion, and particularly around the idea of which we delved into even before tonight as a panel, a preemptive, about the whole notion of Black Hollywood and what that means. And Mo rightfully started out in terms of thinking about the timeliness of this discussion with regards to the passing of cultural studies critic and Black feminist and film scholar Bell Hooks. And also, obviously, in thinking, I think it was just last week with, which probably is even more connected to this discussion, with the passing of actor Sidney Poitier, who I think is kind of the ultimate face of any discussion centered around the idea or notion of Black Hollywood. And so just in preparing for this discussion this evening, I think a great place to start, and I'll definitely go around the Zoom. You can tell I've been teaching on Zoom for 2 years now, so I'm used to saying, this is who I see to my right, and this, so I'll go around to ask each of the panelists, as far as your thoughts or your estimation, what is Black Hollywood, if anything? And since Denise is nodding, I'll let Denise jump on first.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I just want to say this is such an honor to just be here amongst some dope fellow creatives. So just thank you and welcome, everyone. So we had an opportunity to kind of just really dive into this in the background. And so I had an opportunity to just think about it more. And from my perspective of being an entrepreneur, being a filmmaker, having produced my own content and having worked on other people's content, I recently worked on Issa Rae's new show that's coming on HBO. So from my perspective, I had an opportunity to kind of see, like, when, you know, you're producing something from your end, and then when you're brought on to work on a project with someone, and knowing the culture, knowing the environment of just Hollywood, visually as a filmmaker, what I see Black Hollywood would look like is from the production assistants, from the PA to the executive producer, the network execs, being people of color, being Black. So I haven't been on a project where I've seen from the bottom to the top where that is. For me, visually, that's what Black Hollywood would visually look like to me. I know that with Issa Rae, she was very intentional of having people of color, having women. And so I was able to get a little sprinkle of it and see the potential and what it could look like, and it would be dope. But we still have some feet to go. So visually, that's what it would look like to me. But for me, I think Black Hollywood is a mindset. And what I mean by mindset is how we produce, how we create our projects, our content, our mindset behind it. Because Hollywood, there's a position for everybody. You got someone to take care of the greens, you got someone do the hair, you got someone to place the props. There's a position for everyone. And I think that's just a mindset when we're doing our projects, to ensure that we have people in place, having the quality equipment, having, just having everything in place. I think it's a mindset for us to have, and when we're doing our projects, and not to get caught up on, oh, Hollywood is whitewashed or whatever. I think we when we're producing our content, it doesn't matter if we have a $0 budget, we have $1,000 budget, but let's have a mindset. I'm shooting this. I have a mindset of just, I'm in Hollywood. I'm shooting this on, on a Hollywood budget, even though if it's free, and just having everything in place, being organized, making sure you're communicating. And so visually, and that's my perspective on the mindset of Black Hollywood.
Oh, wow, Denise, thank you. And how you're using the term visually, but you're talking about what we see behind the camera as far as the folks who actually make the images that we get to see on screen.
Exactly.
Thank you for that. Wow. Okay. All right, Denise. So April, what are your thoughts?
I have to say first that I am recovering from COVID. So if you see me mute or dip off, it's just that I need to, do the things.
Okay. It's all good.
But I think for me, like, there are so many layers to this and so many layers to this conversation. And I've had this conversation with lots of other filmmakers before, but today I was programming some movies, right? And I came across this director statement from the director of Chameleon Street about Hollywood, right? And so I'm just going to read the first couple of lines because I think it sort of like links to some of the hesitations I have and we all might have about Hollywood and how it interacts with Blackness.
Right.
So the first bit of his director's statement reads, "Vampires have a virulent contempt for the human beings whose lifeblood they surreptitiously suck. Likewise, Hollywood has a virulent contempt for the independent filmmakers whose work they surreptitiously suck and cannibalize, not to mention ostracize." So like, I think that's sort of like part of the conversation. And I think, when we talked before, it's like, is there a Black Hollywood? Does it serve us? Or does it just sort of like eat us up? And one of the things that or the metaphors I always use for Hollywood is that it's kind of like the Borg from Star Trek, where it just sucks everything up and assimilates, takes the life out of. But then by the same token, I do feel like Black people have a remarkable talent and skill in like remixing things that don't serve us or belong to us and making them ours. So I feel like in that context, it is possible for a Black Hollywood to exist, just like it is possible for, faux Gucci to exist and it to be a completely different thing for us. So yeah, I don't know. Like for me personally, I am definitely outside of those parameters. And so I feel like an outsider looking in lots of times. And sometimes I get a privileged pass to sort of like dabble in what Hollywood is, but I never really truly feel like an insider. And I think part of that is there's a certain level of independence that I think is important in my work. And there's a certain level of ownership and voice that I think is important in my work. And I know for me personally, like becoming Hollywood means losing a lot of that or sacrificing a lot of that or sacrificing a lot of my integrity, I guess. So I'll leave it there.
Wow, that's a great set of insights, and especially how you rounded it out in terms of a potential loss of integrity, but starting with Chameleon Street, which is a brilliant film. And anyone who hasn't seen it, I would highly recommend it. It ties in really well with this whole discussion about our place in this system, especially as Black people. So thank you for that. And so Marco, am I supposed to say Marco? I'm not supposed to say Mo, because do I have two Mo's, or do I just have a Marco and a Mo? And you're muted.
Marco, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
So my take on it is, it's a couple of different ways I look at it. I look at it from mindset, right? Like, so I have a youth program where we teach young kids about film, First Take Youth Film Program. And we're able to teach and hear their stories and embrace their stories and get I get amazing content and information from them that, and then we're able to take those kids a lot of times and integrate them into our film studio, which is Film House. Right. And now they start interning for us. They start working for us. A lot of times they work for us for a certain amount of time. They end up going on productions, and then they go off to different cities and they go and their wings fly. Right. And then we also have a film festival called the Urban Film Festival, where we also help young up and coming filmmakers. Right. So when I say mindset, I mean how we all have to be conscious about the content that we develop and be supportive of each other. Sometimes even some of the stories I see a lot of times, people come out with first time in up and coming filmmakers, a lot of times make very urban films and a lot of say conscious however you want to call it. Black people might not be as supportive of some of the urban films, but that's their first step sometimes because that's what they're familiar with. But we still have to be supportive because they will grow and they will, like they will start making different levels of content. But I think it's very important for as a mindset, as a people, what I'm saying, for us to just be very supportive of each other. And like I remember when I'd be at my mom's house when I was a little younger, she'd be watching these films that were like horrible. I mean, like the production value was way out. It was way out of focus. I'm like, Mom, what are you watching? She's like, they trying. They Black, they trying. You know what I'm saying? So I'd be like, okay. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's where like I learned the mindset from, And then also I say it also starts with ownership. I think the financial aspect is the most important aspect. When we can truly be from the beginning of developing the content, financing our own content, creating our own content, casting, our full control, our stories, to being able to sell, monetize, add revenue if we're on AVOD platforms, and we need to own. Like, Tyler Perry, of course, is moving in that direction. Byron Allen. My favorite is Charles King with Macro. You know what I'm saying? Like these people are moving.
I'm gonna say HU.
Right. I went to FAM, you know what I'm saying? So,
Sorry, it's okay. It's all HBCU
Okay.
love, but yeah, Charles King is definitely Howard.
So what I'm saying is, it's important that we support each other from the beginning. We help embrace, we help uplift the young up and coming generation. We keep giving back while developing our content. And then at the same time, it's important that we put ourselves in a position to control our own destiny. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like Denise, I shoot all my own content. We've shot many movies. We're in the middle of shooting a movie right now. We're in the middle of creating a TV show. We're doing some stuff with O Network. Like we're nonstop creating content, but we're very, very, we're very solid on what we shoot. We have a lot of content that comes into my office and I pass on. I saw some really big TV shows that I kind of helped produce from the beginning, but I didn't want to work on that type of content. I didn't want to put my energy in that direction because I feel like the mindset that I have and my goals for why I'm developing content is to help uplift my people and to help educate and just, make people aware of some of the biases they have. You know what I'm saying? We're all beautiful people, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes, we're just getting there. Like right now, we're in right now, right? We're in, cool. Now, while we're in, we need to make sure that we're educating and letting people know how cool we are. You know what I'm saying? Our culture has always been loved and loved, but it's always been kind of pimped, So now it's time for us to kind of own us, reflect us and monetize off us, and that's kind of where I'm going with it. That's my Black.
Wow. Thank you so much, Marco. I know there's some things that I don't want to go all the way deep down a rabbit hole, but there's some things I would love to, and I will try to come back as far as, which I think you definitely hit the nail on the head in terms of and I think all of you all have, as far as the importance of the economic side, the business side, because when we say Hollywood, we are talking about industry. We're talking about one that has probably the most widespread cultural impact, but it is a business nonetheless. And so just kind of thinking about it within that context, even though we know that, okay, we're artists, we're creatives, but just as soon as you put that term Hollywood or any kind of wood, Bollywood, Nollywood, we're talking about industry. And so the money you're following the money, and what is the connection between the money and the content and the stories. So thank you, Marco. And so Mo, you're going to chime in, I know for certain.
Oh, you know that, especially now, like y'all just it's like a growing fire. And yes, Marco said, Black culture has been pimped in Hollywood for centuries. But Black Hollywood is a gray space. So when I first think of Black Hollywood, I think of all our colleagues and friends who are in Hollywood plying their craft as creatives and as production folks and as managers. And we all have friends out there making their way, doing their thing. They have figured out how to navigate their space in a global juggernaut that is not built for them. So the other side of Black Hollywood is that it really is window dressing. And like Marco said, we're hot right now. So Black culture, Black content is hot right now. So it's a Black Hollywood to me window dressing, because it sells. And the moment it doesn't sell, like way back in the 70s, when what they call blaxploitation films stopped getting hot and became controversial and politically, not sexy or profitable, what took over were horror films. And it took what, 20, 30 years before Black Hollywood got hot again. So it's a cyclical, it's a cyclical window dressing juggernaut.
Okay, well, yeah, I think that's, and that kind of does tie into how I kind of wanted to respond to Marco that, and I think, I mean, you touched on it, Mo, in terms of Black film being a part of the Hollywood output is really nothing new. I kind of said to an executive, like, oh yeah, we become cool every 20 years, so, and I mean, and as far as from a research standpoint, as far as film studies scholarship, it's just every however many generations. Actually, I say something very different. I'll say like, okay, you're calling me because of George Floyd, and the generation you call because of Rodney King. There's
Right.
something, that happens as to why you're calling us. And even in terms of, just like you said, Mo, that so before we were what Nelson George calls the new Black wave, this kind of current set of mainstream Black films, then there was New Jack cinema.
Yeah, cinema.
So
right.
yeah, so as far as Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society, and so that set of films, and then of course even prior to that was Black exploitation, and as we talked about leading up to this discussion, and even before that, which again ties in with Sidney Poitier, there were the Black musicals that Hollywood adopted that kind of shut down or helped to shut down the economic industry of Black cinema that we already had in this country in terms of the history of the race movies from the early 1900s up until the time that we start to get a Black star system of the Sidney Poitiers and the Harry Belafontes and the Lena Hornes, the Black musicals like Carmen Jones and Cabin in the Sky. And so, but it kind of always happens from the outside. So you have these Black independent filmmakers, and just kind of like, as April said, that idea about Hollywood just absorbs that which tries to push up against it, that once any kind of independent craft, as far as film, appears to become profitable, right? So we get so we can talk about Black exploitation, but the conversation I think should always start with obviously Van Peebles' Sweetback.
Right.
So Sweetback made you didn't spend anything on it, and it made how much money? Wow, let's do Black it's always the independent steps out first, and then Hollywood says, oh wow, we can make money off them.
Right. So there's some folks, Montre, that ask if we can make comments, and I beg that they would make comments, because you made a great comment about Black film industry, before, like how many people, I'd love to ask people listening and watching, like how many of y'all know about Black cinema outside of Hollywood? Do you know that there's a history of Black cinema outside Hollywood? Yay or nay in the chat. And Doctor, could you build on?
Oh, okay.
Tell folks what that is.
I see some yeses.
Good.
For my yeses, and yes, say more. So, and
Oscar
thank you.
Michaud.
Even though there were people before Oscar Michaud, and Oscar Michaud had many contemporaries, but we often say, okay, that's the one, even though there were plenty more, who we pinpoint to say kind of like that, the father of Black cinema, Black American cinema. And again, just from that economic standpoint, and even kind of following up with what Marco was saying about his mother looking beyond, just beyond
they trying.
The images. But the fact is that when we look at the history of race movies, again, starting even before the first feature film, D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, but certainly immediately after Birth of a Nation and all of its blatantly racist propaganda, that Black people did not just stand idle and say, okay, you can portray us as these bucks and coons and tragic mulattoes and mammies, and it's all good. Instead, as they were already making films, of course, Oscar Micheaux answered back. And in fact, he wasn't even the first, but I think one of the first was Birth of a Race, which was the answer back to Birth of a Nation. But the more notable answer to D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation was Oscar Micheaux's Within Our Gates. And notably, one of the most controversial scenes in Birth of a Nation, which was the attempted rape of the Lillian Gish character. It's really problematic because you see this Black male character who seems so clearly modeled after Booker T. Washington. And the idea that such a kind of racist portrayal of a Black educator and activist would be presented, this suspicion of not just a Black man, but a mixed race man, because you see like the quote mulatto type is cannot be trusted, that he can smile in white people's faces and that kind of reference to the Atlanta Compromise. But as soon as you're not looking, he's going to be lusting after and attempting to rape a white woman. Oscar Micheaux totally flips that and instead presents a scene of a white man attempting to rape a mixed race woman who he comes to find out is his daughter. And when we think about just, Black feminism definitely has informed this discussion about the role, the central role of sex in terms of the history and the legacy of enslavement in America, as just a kind of economic tool. That Oscar Micheaux's presentation of a white man trying to rape his own daughter who is half Black is far more historically accurate in terms of our history and our legacy and what we've endured than what was presented in Birth of a Nation. So, but again, those kinds of, it's really just important to remember in terms of the idea of Hollywood or Black Hollywood, that there's a pretty significant history of African Americans controlling the image, controlling the distribution, the exhibition, the finance, the production, even right down to Madam C.J. Walker building and owning theaters for Black films and Black audiences. So we have done this. In fact, it could be argued that between Hollywood and so-called integration is what destroyed a mainstream Black film industry in the United States.
I mean, I think you make me think of the Negro League. You make me think of
exactly.
like all
the Black banks, and we're talking about HBCUs, and it's the same kind of story. Yeah.
You know, I like to comment on that. The thing is that like you guys went to Howard, right? So I know there's like a very popular Howard conversation. It's kind of like, to me, like, so when you think of like the Du Bois Booker T kind of conversations, right? Like there is the understanding that there is, like, say, this model content that we're making, right, to enhance the betterment and the outlook and the perception of our people, right? But like I was saying, then there's the content that's just raw, and it's going to come the way it's going to come because it's actually more of the stories of that community, right? And that's why I was saying, like, it's still about making sure that we embrace, and like, I mean, look how well, for instance, like look at John Singleton, for instance. Like, say John Singleton came out with Boys in the Hood from the beginning, right? One of my phenomenal,
amazing movie,
right? But it was of his community, and then he led into making all kinds of award-winning, beautiful content that was uplifting. He was going to, he was actually one of my mentors, and before he passed, he was going into the Emmett Till story. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was like, me and him were in DR talking about it. Like, he was really, really passionate about the Emmett Till story. And he wanted me to work on it with me. He was like, yo, Mark, I want you to work on it, but keep it 100 with you. I've never gotten this level of aggression
Even with Rosewood, more than Rosewood.
He said he never had gotten the level because of the timing, what was going on currently in the country, and him and the way he was gonna he was gonna put it out there, like he was gonna show how they did it.
There you go. Right.
So, you know, people were like he was getting a lot of kickback. He was like, "Mark, I'm getting kickback from the highest levels on this one. This one is a little bit scary, but are you rocking?" I was like, "I'm rocking." You know,
right.
And unfortunately, you know, he ended up passing a couple months later. But the thing is that I say
conspiracy.
You know. You have the Du Bois Booker T thing. You have different perceptions, but at the end of the day, we just need to embrace each other, support each other.
And well, it's interesting because I really wasn't necessarily, but I'm actually looking at the comments. I'm thinking, okay, maybe Marco was also answering back or considering the comments. And I want to lean on both you, April, and Denise in terms of, is there a relationship, or do you see a connection to what it is we see on screen? And again, like I said, the money, the economic aspect. April, I might jump with you first and then go to Denise.
Always. Always. Screens are about money. So I think the thing that's interesting, like in sort of like scrolling through the comments too, I'm one of those people where, like, I grew up in very rural Alabama, very traditional Black Baptist Southern upbringing. Like I grew up on a dirt road, all that kind of stuff. And so I get very uncomfortable when people start trying to police Black content, like police the Black content that's made by Black people. Because I feel like, part of me is always like, but why don't we get to play and experiment? Like, why don't we get to do all of the messy stuff until we come to the good stuff, right? It's always sort of like, but people are watching, so we have to present a certain way. And I grew up in Alabama, so I'm just like, we were always presenting a certain way. That didn't stop us from getting everything that we got. Like, being dressed a certain way, me talking this way didn't stop me from getting all the stuff that I get for being Black, right? Didn't help us progress in any way, shape, or form. So for me, like, just as a storyteller, I sort of like concern myself less with the white gaze and what white people are going to think about what I make, and what white people are going to think about Black people because what I make. Like, I think as a Black creator, that's always something that is sort of in the back of my head. Like if I make a villain in a film, I always have to sort of like really like sort of examine it and like, I think do more work unpacking it than if it's a Black villain than if it wasn't. But for me, I think it's super important for there to be gritty boys in the hood type stories. I think it's super important for there to be stories coming out of the South, stories about wealth and privilege and education, but then also like stories about struggle. But in terms of the money aspect, I feel like, you look at someone like Issa Rae, she started out just doing, a web series. And it's like, it was something that she wanted to do. It was exciting. It was interesting. And I think for the longest time, we always sort of wanted a Black Friends or a Black Sex and the City or a Black Seinfeld, and she saw like this void and started creating really original content. And then it turns into something else when it becomes profitable. It's still Black content, and it's just sort of like a different kind of Black content. And I think once you start considering mainstream audiences, then a lot about that content shifts, sometimes in positive ways because you get more funding, so that production value is lux. But yeah, I just think it's super complicated. It's super complicated, and I'll leave it there. I feel like I've talked enough.
No, you haven't, but that's okay. I had one of the panelists, Lydia, asked April maybe clarification when you said regardless of what we call, it's called politics of respectability, right? So beyond the politics of respectability, in terms of Black representation, beyond just film, but just even social performance, you mentioned that we still got what we got. So if you want to just clarify, just in case.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for me, I'll still just treat it like the N word, because that's how they thought about me, right? And so I think the question was, do you believe that being Black kept me from getting more? Most definitely, all the time. I'm still in my life, I would like to make money comparable to the work that I'm doing, right? Like, and that has been a lifelong struggle, right? Like, part of me sort of like collecting degrees, it's like, I'm at Harvard now, that's great. Can I get some money to match that? Like, but it's still like, there's still, because of the way that I look, there's still in every sort of like facet of my life, this burden of proving that I'm worthy, right? It's like, prove that you're worthy at work, prove that you're worthy creatively. And that was one of the very difficult things with me for like with the Hollywood model was, here's this money, yes, because we believe in your vision, but then we're going to be on you like the police because we need you to show us at every step of the way that you deserve this money. And sort of like not having the freedom that other first time white filmmakers have to just sort of like go off and experiment and be creative. So I do think it was limiting. And I've always, one of the things is sort of like that, what do you call it? The double consciousness and the veil, where it's like, I have always sort of come up presenting respectability because I grew up in Alabama. And I come from a certain kind of family, and it's like everything reflects upon everyone else and everyone knows everyone else. So I have to behave a certain way in the world. I don't really feel like that's gotten me much of anywhere except in positions where I have to sort of like contort and sort of do self-harm in a way with quieting myself and my real self to make other people comfortable.
Wow.
And now that I'm about to be 45, I'm kind of like, F that. Like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like, I'm not proving myself anymore. I'm not sort of like bending over backwards to make people who don't believe I'm worthy comfortable. Like, you have to get comfortable with the silence because that's what you're going to get. And that's where I am.
Well, thank you for that, April. I think, and I'm gonna shift the question a bit because someone would be trying to come into a room while I'm doing moderating a panel, because that's just life in 2022. But I kind of want to just shift the question a bit, just based on what it is that April shared, and I think it would be it would be a major blind spot not to hit in what I heard from you, the idea of feeling the need to prove yourself. And so even though we're talking about the discussion in terms of Black Hollywood or Black creatives within the film system, nonetheless, there is an additional set of hurdles. I think that we both being Black and women, I know that we as both Black and women face, and I would say, but I'm throwing it to Denise that, and I definitely share this with my students who, the majority of whom are women, that one might find that the challenge that you're facing within the culture of film is one in which the gender is perhaps even much, if not more, the problem than race. So we talked about Issa Rae but that idea of being a woman in the most boys club ever, minus the NBA and the NFL. I can't think of anything else more male dominated than film. So both in terms of, and you work with Issa Rae and in terms of race and gender, what are your thoughts? As well as the idea, of course, about the economics of it as well and the content.
I have a lot of thoughts. Okay, so let me center my thought so that I can articulate what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling right now. Okay, so I agree 100% what you have said, April, and the comments that are coming up about we're not able to fail in public. And it's making me think, and you guys let me know your perspectives on this, because not only we're in a male dominated industry, but it's a white male dominated industry. And from all aspects of the different roles and responsibilities, like everyone from the crew to yeah. And so it makes me think in terms of the failing in public. Is that something that we put on ourselves because we're thinking about how we got there? We want to make sure, if we're the only Black person on this set, we want to make sure that we don't put a bad taste in anybody's mouth. Are we thinking about, the history, just the people before us? Is it the pressure that we're getting from society? Like, I'm trying to really think about what is it that we can't fail in public. We can't just really 100% freely just create, especially as a Black woman. I think we just deal with layers upon layers of just life that just happens. And so, like, what is that? Like, is it we put it on
It's a
ourselves?
mind hustle. It's a mind hustle. It's a pimp game. It's a pimp trick. I'm gonna keep you on your toes, keep you thinking you ain't doing enough, so that you keep spinning on that wheel, that gerbil wheel, and you don't realize that you're way ahead of me. Like, you showed up ahead of me in the game. It is a boys' game, as Montre said, and it is a pimp boys game. Because, and I say pimp because pimping is manipulation, is exploitation. It's about taking more than I give. Hollywood takes more than it gives. So to keep you giving more and they taking more, I got to keep you thinking that you're not good enough. And I know you showed up better, but I got to make you believe you're not good enough, because then you just keep hustling, you'll keep scrambling, and I can keep sitting back and I can keep taking it off. It's a pimp game of the highest order, of a global order.
Okay, thank you, Mo. Thank you, Mo. But Denise was in mid sentence, so
I'm sorry.
No, he's totally like it's a mind thing from all perspective. We come into a situation where we feel like we have to, and we're already prepared, but because we're in a room and everybody don't look like us, or we're on set, everybody don't look like us. And you're right, like we are killing ourselves, and it's crazy, because it's so competitive, even within departments where you find there's another Black person or another Black female, and then there's this tension of competitiveness, and it's just it could be so weird. And like I think it's important as filmmakers, when we're in these situations, for us to be very reflective and really see and be intentional about what's happening, because you're right, it can kill us. We can just
and it may not even physical, but just kill your creativity.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And where you're going, you sitting there tripping on this, and yeah.
Okay, wow. Thank you so much for that, Denise. Now you got my mind spinning about all kinds of past experiences. Marco, you wanted to jump in?
Yes. So I've been in many rooms, many sets, many business, stuff where I'm the only brother, right? And I knew my life would go that way at a very young age. I got all tatted up on purpose, so that I can show that when I go and do business, a lot of times I go in with like a suit or whatever, they don't see my tats until I've already closed the deal. Mm-hmm. Right? But what I say is that, me going to FAMU, it helped me to be unapologetically Black. I wear my Black with pride. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know who I am. I know what I bring to the table. No matter what business venture I'm in, I'm going to be one of the stronger players in the game, and I'm going to do what I'm supposed to on my side. So, a lot of times, I will be the only one in there. They will try to play those little games with me, and I just switch right through them. I just push right through. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I get, I do get kickback. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, that's something you're dealing with. You know what I'm saying? That's not going to take my that's not going to take me anywhere within who I know I am, you know? And I mean, and I'm not going to say like it's always easy. I mean, sometimes you're in a room of, you know, they start playing a little snickering games and making a little, you know, silly comments. But I just stand on my two, you know, and I just make sure that they always understand that I'm here because of what I bring to the table and what I can do, you know. And I think that it's important that, you know, we push that into our youth, into the people that we're on set with. Like when I'm on set, like what Denise is saying, like I've been on set with people that are, you know, they're playing the games, they're trying to, you know, they're doing the chuck and jiving, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, yo, my brother, you know what I'm saying? Like we don't even gotta, you know what I'm saying? Like I pull in, man, you know, you ain't gotta even do all that, bro. You be you. You're here for what you do. You know what I'm saying? Do what you do. You know, and then, you know, and they see off the rip that, you know, I'm here to support them and there is no competition. You know what I'm saying? We're in this together, you know, and it's, so I think it's very important, once again, that we're very supportive of each other. You know, and if you and then go back to what April was saying about the, you know, like and what you were saying with your question about the popularity of the screens and what's selling. I mean, yeah, if you look at even currently right now in Black Hollywood or in Hollywood, the content that does best on TV is the BMFs, the Ghost, Snowfalls. You know what I'm saying? And I love these shows. I'm not saying anything. You know, I'm taking nothing from it. I know the producer. I know people involved in the project. I mean, John Singleton's involved. Snowfall is great content, right? But at the end of the day, it's still, that's what people want to see, is that portrayal. And that's what's also pushed. That's what's pushed onto, you know, primetime hours, right? I mean, you also got the Blackish, you know what I'm saying? You have shows that aren't like that are still doing well. But I mean, if you look at what monetizes a lot of times, it's that, what we've always been portrayed to be. That's a hard thing to fight against, right? But we have to, over time, when we have more and more and more filmmakers, that it doesn't even become, hopefully one day, it doesn't become Black cinema in a weird way. It becomes American cinema. It becomes international cinema. It becomes worldly cinema. I travel to all the film markets. I go to Berlin, I go to Cannes, I go to all these different markets. And many markets I go to, say 7 years ago, I was told that every country, they don't buy Black content. They're like, listen, if you don't put white faces in your content, it's not going to monetize. I mean, I'm talking about just like that. These people from other countries, they don't even have like they don't have a threshold of like say, you know, they don't say it like, they're like, no, we don't buy Black people, because their language, they can't even cover up for like saying it politely. You know what I'm saying? Like they're just like, Black people don't sell. We can't buy Black people. It's changed now. It's starting to change where they're seeing it as just educational of a different culture, and that's a good start, you know.
So Marco, can I push back a little bit? just a smidgen. Because you do keep coming back, and so it's making me think about, again, like one side of the brain and the other. So just the whole, okay, this is business and the, you know, the mechanics of the machine. But the other side, rightfully so, what is it, again, as we were saying, what is it we see on screen? And so it's just interesting, like you said, this myth that, you said a lot, so there's a lot I want to come back on, but this idea, which is finally starting, as you said, to be debunked, of this myth of Black film, Black cast film not selling abroad. And the idea that African-American or predominantly African-American cast and African-American directed films not being able to sell in international markets as the economic justification for the Hollywood system, putting this artificial cap on how much money they will spend on these kind of films. You're right. I mean, that's the tradition, and hence why they created this genre, which is not a genre, called Black film. And it didn't matter if it were Haile Garima doing a slave fantasy, you know, multi-universe, Sankofa, or it's Boys in the Hood, or it's it doesn't matter if it's a comedy or it's a period piece or it's a thriller. It just became Black film. And I don't even believe that there's an ignorance with that. It was a money thing, that there's a particular number that it is capped that's attached to Black film, and a false justification that will see the reason why we can't spend more for your films again, because it doesn't sell in international markets. And as we know, truth be told, the money isn't made in North America. The money is made in international territories, right? So if it doesn't have legs to move around the globe, then it's got to have a cap because we can't get a return. But the reality of it is that, and I wonder when you're going to these international, when you're going to festivals and you're hitting these international markets, if the as far as sales, if they're just not regurgitating that which Hollywood told them, because we can go as far back as 1997, I think East Bayou, and this kind of ties into things that April mentioned when we were preparing for this discussion, and even now about Southern Black culture being represented on screen. When East Bayou hit in 97, that was like the #1 film box office in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anybody, I guess maybe some people in Japan might have known Samuel L. Jackson, but compared to whoever was the major star as far as white actors at the time coming out of Hollywood. And of course, we can look at France and think about their obsession with Spike Lee, or the fact that, again, when Sweetback dropped, it dropped with this whole idea of how it could be marketed and sold internationally. And just thinking as somebody who studied in film school in the UK and looking at European markets, Black cinema is, and particularly African-American cinema, is always sold.
Always.
But Hollywood has always been telling us that it doesn't, because they just want to limit the amount of money that they invest in the film, which is just smart business, as unfortunate as it may be, because if I know that the audience is going to come anyway, then I have this kind of false kind of cap on the budget to get a higher return. I can pay the actors less, I can spend less money on your films. That means I'm going to get more money back because all of y'all are going to come anyway.
Right.
But I think there's also the idea of the whole Black genre thing, which is problematic. I guess it ties to the idea of the representations. And what you were saying is that we can have it. We actually do, I think at this point, have it all. You can have a Tyler Perry, and you can have a Barry Jenkins, you can have an Ava, because the issue isn't, we keep saying it's race, but it's actually not about race and representations. We're being kind of closed in falsely. White representations have high art, art house cinema, and they have popular film, and they have action. So we're not any less diverse in our taste as far as Black audience goers as any other group of people. So it's a false kind of choice between I can have Ava or I can have Tyler Perry. No, I can have both because Black audiences have different tastes.
Right.
But then they keep pigeonholing us as an audience and as filmmakers because of, I don't know. Maybe, do you think it's because of profit?
I think it was because of profit, but the beautiful thing is now the platforms allow the content to go everywhere. See, that's why now the interest is there, because they can see it for themselves. I would literally go into these meetings and I'll be dealing with there used to be gatekeepers.
Yeah.
This guy was over all of the German content pretty much. He's a big distribution company in Germany. You had to deal with him, and he's saying no, right? Same thing in Italy, all these different countries. Now I'm like, hey, look, man, I'm just keeping it 100 with you. I'm doing these type of numbers in your country.
Mm-hmm.
We're popular in your country.
Right.
Maybe you can give me a TV deal as well, because I'm only making the money on the streaming platforms. But obviously, we're doing so well on the streaming platforms. I mean, people, maybe the TV might want to buy it. So now I have numbers to come back to them with, which I never had that data before. So the streaming is changing the game.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're taking you need to moderate. No, I'm just kidding. No, but that's exactly it. I mean, that's the next, it's two questions that are rolling through my head I want to pose to the panel. I hope we're not going too far over, but one is definitely, I mean, I think I already know where I stand, but like your view or opinion, again, is what Marco was saying about how streaming, whether it's a DIY, you talk about aggregate buyers and how you yourself as an independent filmmaker can get your stuff out on Netflix and Amazon Prime and the rest. But even just having a Netflix, having an Amazon, how that is like you said, it's changed the game in terms of the gatekeepers. That's a one. I'm gonna do two questions, so I know I get to it before we close up. And then again, with the global markets, how we can look towards another Black industry, notably Nollywood, as showing us the model that there's no excuses about how Black content is not global, because the third largest film industry on the planet Earth is the Nigerian film industry. So, I mean, if we can tie it, I think there is a tie-in between both, but Mo, I'm gonna jump to you and then I'm gonna go around. So if you had any thoughts on that.
Give it to me. I was actually engaging in the chat, so I
Oh,
missed the
see,
front end of it.
Okay, so one, I was just thinking, just following up with what Marco was saying about, again, how streaming, both in terms of just that being, especially as we've all been online for the last 2 years, now going on 3.
Right.
But even before COVID and the pandemic, you know, people were just spending more time watching via screens versus in the cinema, which is a whole other conversation. But how streaming has been able to kind of get rid of the gatekeepers and allow for more Black content, and then, which is global. I mean, Netflix is global, and then with the globe in mind, with those international territories, how our brothers and sisters in Nigeria have also definitely changed the world stage and given us kind of a model to say, okay, we can get in there too.
So, I mean, I think of a James Brown lyric, you know, build the factory and own the job. People, we got to get over before we go under. And so if technology allows us that leg up in this time, know that all of this is cyclical. I think we've mentioned it before. Like, it's cyclical. So while the wave is high, take full advantage of this to build your factory and own your job, own and nurture your audience so that they will follow you anywhere. It is like it's the formula for becoming a star. Like, you want to. I mean, I'm using a record industry reference. You know, Prince is my dude. That's my favorite artist. I've studied the business of Prince even more than the music of Prince, and he was clear. He deliberately created Purple Rain to get that pop audience, so that then, you know, for the rest of your career, you have a guaranteed half a million units sold, no matter how, if it's out of the back of your trunk through Warner Brothers or your own, you know, your own streaming service. And he showed it. And he said when he put out his first, you know, self-produced record, he sold 250,000 units and made more money on that 250,000 units than he did off of Purple Rain. And the industry told him he was a failure. He was dropping off. And he was like, okay, whatever, but I'm gonna keep showing up anywhere on the planet, and my audience is showing up for me. So filmmakers, you know, I beg filmmakers to do the same. While the streaming and technology is allowing us to democratize the scene and build your audience, nurture that audience, bring them into your home. Like, use social media, use old school, just building, like you build community. So they're gonna be there. And like, Hollywood is one avenue. It ain't got to be the main avenue. Like, again, control your destiny. That's it. Control your destiny. Always.
Okay, you now, Reverend Dr. Mo.
You ain't know? You ain't know?
I know now. I know now. Okay. Okay. And April, I'm throwing it to you now because Mo brought it on down. So I'm hoping the rest of y'all gonna bring it all the way home.
I don't know if I can follow. You know, I don't know if I can follow. I did want to say, just in general, I love Marco's vibe. I feel like, Marco, I feel like you have the true I am a liberated artist vibe, right? And I feel like that is something, I think, like, when we're talking about Black Hollywood, one of the things for me is like, I think that when you're first starting out in the industry, it is the dream. The dream is, right, the being discovered, like the having somebody give you an offer and all this kind of stuff. And once you get on the road, you realize that the dream is to actually feel like a free, liberated artist who can create and who can reach your audiences without having to like sacrifice parts of yourself. So I applaud that. And I feel like that's a blessing to be there. And I'm hoping one day we can all be there. But in terms of like streaming, I think, so like I've seen it from a few different angles and perspectives. And I think about it from a few different angles and perspectives. Like I think about it as a viewer, and like as a programmer, because one of the things that's super important for me is like sort of like putting all these different voices in front of different audiences that may not necessarily be receptive to these different voices and different stories, right? And before, there used to be more limitations on what I could find and what I could get access to, because I could only get it from certain sources, like from the main distributors or whatever. And now that we have like all these streaming platforms, and now that we have a lot of artists who are like using their social medias and their own YouTube and Vimeo pages, it's easier for me to discover and track and present work and even have direct contact with those artists, whereas before I wouldn't have been able to do that. Now I can talk directly to filmmakers if I want to program something of theirs. And so that has shifted things a lot. And I think, like one of the things about Hollywood is like, we're talking a lot about it from, I don't want to say the perspective, but like a Black perspective. Is that at the end of the day, it really is about numbers, like in profitability, and can you show me or can you prove? And so, like Marco said before, one of the things that's great now about having things be so accessible and audiences be so accessible across platforms is that you actually have the proof, right? You don't have to take somebody else's word or narrative for it. You can actually watch your own numbers. You can watch your own performances. You can chart your own views, and you can go into a room and say, oh, you don't want it? Well, I have like 15 million followers. So, okay, somebody will, right? And they know that somebody will, if you can prove that. So I think it just gives us a little bit more leverage. And then in terms of Nollywood, man, I have been following Nollywood for a large portion of my life. Like I used to live in Philadelphia, and I would go to the little, they always used to do VHS bootlegs. You could go to a little behind the store there, you go back into the like little closet, and they would have all these bootleg VHS tapes that they actually got mailed from Nigeria, and you could just rent them like a Blockbuster. And I think one thing that is really kind of cool about Nollywood is it's like they've always known that they had an audience. It was just, how resourceful can we be in getting these stories to the audiences that we have? They've always been in communication with their audiences and like made adjustments and adaptations. And so I feel like Black people in America have been doing a lot of that too, but there's something about the perseverance and just the absolute pride in being able to sort of like, I don't know how to, like there's a system and a way of doing things. And then there are 1,000 other ways that you can do it. Looking at all these other ways and all these avenues and all these streams and saying, nothing's gonna stop me from making this movie and putting it out in front of people. Like there's something to that. Yeah, that's all.
And I feel like with what April is saying too, I think with Nollywood, I wonder if I don't think they have the same pressures that we have in the United States as being Black filmmakers, right? Because we're Black, we're women, all these pressures and stereotypes and da-da-da. In Africa, they can create free willy-nilly, and you're right, with the pride and being able to tell their stories. I think that level of not having that burden, their yoke is easy for them. To that. And then I wanted to answer this question from Yanatha, if I can, Dr. Montre. She had a question about.
I literally was gonna say, I want to make sure, because we are running low on time, that we get to some of the questions in the chat. So thank you for that, Denise. Okay.
This one I can relate to. How do you react when we offer support to one another and it's not received? I've been on set where surprisingly it was me and another Black woman, and offering, trying to have that camaraderie, and when it's lunchtime, and you can see that there's a wall. And I learned not to take it personal, because I don't know who they're trying to either suck up to, or they're trying to get in with the first AD, or because they're trying to get in with other departments, or whatever, things that they're thinking about, whatever stress that's on them. And I learned not to take it to heart. And I've come to the realization that within this industry, this film and entertainment industry, there's so many different avenues that we can go about getting to where we want to go. You can go the PA route, you can go the self-producing route, you can go publicist route. Ava DuVernay did it as a PR, started off in PR. There's so many different routes. And so knowing yourself, knowing thyself, and knowing just your purpose and the content that you want to create, and understanding that you're a part of a bigger picture, I think it'll help you not to get caught up when the support is not there, or when you're getting rejected. And it also ties in the other question about just someone wanting to decide what type of narrative they want to tell when they're creating their films. Like, as long as you know your purpose and you understand that being a part and creating in this industry, that you're a part of something bigger. Like, you're not just, I think with us being, in America with Black filmmakers, we have, it's our duty. We have so much that we've come from, so much history, so much, many shoulders that we're stepping on, and what's to come, the future, where we can take our generations, our family, our community. Like, we have to think that way and realize and know for ourselves, like, why we're here, understanding our why, to know, okay, these are the types of narrative I wanted to say, not just what's trending, not just what we see that's popular, but looking from within. Sorry if I'm rambling, but I think that's important for Black filmmakers to understand.
You're not rambling, but you definitely gave us a good segue into kind of, and I just quickly kind of go around the Zoom, as far as what do you, is and kind of abbreviated, but what do you all see, each of you see as like the future? What will be the future in terms of Black independent film, or and/or Black creatives' influence and impact within the mainstream Hollywood system? And I'm going to start with Marco. Thank you, Marco.
Hey, thank you. Okay. So real quick, just to finish up the last one, Moses Babathoop from Nollywood is an amazing filmmaker that I met about 7-8 years ago, who said he was going to change the game for Nollywood. He's the one that's brought Nollywood into Netflix. He now he owns like some IMAXs and AMCs in Nigeria, and they are like you were saying, liberated free artists. They are free because they don't have the pressures, or they don't even know or care, because they do have their audience and they're just going to do what they do, right? So they have the beauty of being able to do that, right? So then quickly now I'll go into how Black cinema, Black filmmakers, Black content, and really like, a lot of just different ethnicity content now has the opportunity to develop their content, put it on AVOD platforms like Tubi, Pluto, Quibi, many of them, right? And make revenue, right? It might be slow, but they're going to make revenue to fund themselves to grow and get better and better and better in the craft, especially if we support each other and we watch the content and we comment on the content and we share the content, right? And then there's festivals like my festival and many other Black film festivals and urban film festivals that have been popping up left and right that are very supportive. So I think that we're at a time now where people can tell their stories. More stories will come out, so we'll understand each other better, not just Blacks, but all cultures, right? We'll be able to see, like, I'm really into like what's going on with like the Slumdog Millionaire was an amazing movie to me, right? I love what's going on in their content development, right? Not just the Bollywood stuff, but like the actual dramas that's coming from over there, because they have a lot of drama and trauma, right? So it's like these different stories from around the world with different ethnicities, especially us, that are going to grow, do better, monetize. But I think what's really going to be important is that we get involved with ownership. All right. I'm a partner on a Black-owned streaming company called UDS.TV. There's another one called Quelly. And there's many more to come, right? And the thing is that it's very important that we support them and help them, because we need that so that we can completely control our pipeline, our content, our stories, our future. You know, we don't own any media outlets, you know, so therefore, how can we get upset when they say we're like this or this happens? We ain't got no say so. We don't got no conversation in the game, you know. So I think it's important that we grow into that space.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you so much for that, Mark. I know you, again, and what you were saying about Nigeria does really also tie into the future for us as well, I think. So, okay, so I'll hop on with April. Mo, I'm gonna hit you up last, but you know why. So April, if you could just, like, what do you see as far as kind of what our future will be in terms of Black film?
More voices, more layers, more access. And I think, like, I review a lot of applications for like funding awards. And one of the things that I really like is most applications these days ask, why are you the right person to tell this story? And I feel like that's super important. I've seen, you know, coming from where I come from, most of the movies made about the South, the documentaries are made by people who don't know anything about the South, and Southerners feel that, right? So I think more authentic stories, yeah, where we have more control to all of it.
Okay, all right, that sounds good to me. All right, thank you, April. Okay, Denise?
Yeah, I agree with both Marco and April 100, 1,000 million percent. For me, I'm a visualist. So when I watched Bridgerton, I loved that this period piece was just beautifully colored, painted with diverse characters playing roles of a queen that you wouldn't normally see in a century piece like that. I feel as though the future will also look like that as well. We look at Hamilton. Hamilton was successful on Broadway, and we see how diverse the cast was, telling this period piece that's normally told by white women and men. And so for me, it could be a hope, but I'm hopeful to see more pieces, content where we're doing away with what we used to see, and we're changing the perspective and mindset of how we want to tell our stories, like what it should look like. So telling the story is one thing, but visually, like, what are we going to infusing our background, our cultures, Haitian, Caribbean, you know, our language, Black Panther, you can tell with how the clothing, just visually, I think that's also powerful as well. And towards the future, I think it will really look like that as well. Just very colorful and telling stories, and the cast, what's popping on screen. Like, I feel like when you look at a canvas, a white canvas, like a white sheet, like, it's just boring. But when you start to add colors, it's just like a movie too. And I think that's what made it so successful, films like that. So definitely.
See, you got my eyes just, and now I'm seeing all those colors you're talking about, all these references. So thank you for that. That was awesome. That was amazing. Okay, thank you, Denise. And so, Mo, you want to round it out for me, please?
Oh, thank you, Doctor. Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for being a wonderful, amazing host, and being a a root, because you were just, you know, you were giving. I was like, I want to take your class, because you were teaching, like, and it was fluid. It wasn't, you know, it was just coming out of your pores. So thank you for that. Thank you for holding the space like that. I'm gonna ask all the panelists to please share your social media tags in the chat right now, and take a look, if you can, at the Q&A. We've got 8 questions in the Q&A, and they are some incredible questions. And folks, since we don't, we're running out of time to answer them, I'm going to ask the panelists to please take a look at the Q&A. If you can, I'm going to copy and paste it just in case some of you can't, because we are going to reach out to you and answer these questions. Follow us on social media, and we will answer these questions because they are necessary to move it forward, to move the work forward. And thank you to all the panelists for this edifying conversation. I have to do some housekeeping, as they say, so I'm gonna take a moment to shout out our sponsors, Bank of America, as the Art Center's Heritage Series is presented by our sponsor, Bank of America. Hey, BOA. Bank of America believes that the arts matter. They help economies thrive, help individuals connect with each other and across cultures, and educate and enrich societies. We are grateful for Bank of America's support. So y'all just, thanks again for thank you, Bank of America, for supporting the Heritage Committee. And everybody, give it up for Bank of America and make a whole lot of noise virtually for the Heritage Committee, for, again, the staff members at the Adrian R. Center of African Descent, Keisha, Bridget, Stephanie, Jaleesa, Zaylin, Nicole, and even our sister, especially our sister Mariah Ford, who founded this. This was her brainchild. She has moved on, but we got to shout out the sister who set this off, Mariah Ford, a Howard grad. But yes, so thank you all. Follow the Heritage Committee on YouTube, on social media. We do this at least 6 times throughout the season. Our next one is about Black bodies and dance. And okay, Black bodies in dance, Black bodies in media, period, is hot and heated. So please stay with us. Again, these are consciousness raising conversations, and the movements for how we become more self-determining as storytellers is coming out of these conversations. So I beg you, panelists, to continue these conversations with the folks that are in the chat. We've had over 100 people in the chat following this. That's I think that's a record number for us in these convos live. So please stay engaged with them. Y'all follow these folks. Y'all put all your social media in the chat. Okay, beautiful. Thank you, everybody. It's been a joy. It's been an honor.
Peace and blessings.
It has been fun.
That's awesome. Fun. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You fight a good fight.
Yes, there you go. One.
Yes.
All right.
Steve. Painful rip in my upper heel. I guess it's time to take another.